Good morning.
Trust you're doing great.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And right, guys, he is a social and behavior change specialist, USAID Momentum, save as surging in family planning and obstetrics. So, yes, I'm having this conversation today with Olumide Adefioye. Right, people. Now, according to data from the Nigerian National Population Commission, gender-based violence has been experienced by the Nigerian women throughout their lifetime, and from their present husband, is reported as 19% for demonstrative or emotional violence, and 14% for physical violence, and 5% for sexual abuse. All of these data put together, is probably the reason we have some of this activism being put out there, because we still have people who die from situations called gender-based violence. And this time around, it's not about the woman being abused, it's about both parties, right? Both the woman and the man, one way or another, they're being abused. It doesn't have to be physically or sexually. Sometimes emotionally and psychologically people get abused, but because for the woman it's more profound, or it's out there, they report it a lot, we feel like they are the people who are mostly victims of gender-based violence. But that's why we have Olumide here. He'll give us the right statistics, and he'll give us everything that we need to know about gender-based violence. Welcome again, Olumide.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Now let's talk gender-based violence. When we talk about this, what exactly do we mean?
Okay, thank you. So, gender-based violence are acts of or harmful practices that are directed at an individual based on the person's gender orientation. And when we talk about gender-based violence, there are different types.
Okay.
The more prominent or the more visible ones are the sexual violence, physical violence, intimate partner violence.
Okay.
But then we also have the other ones that people do not actually recognize as gender-based violence. They are also forms of gender-based violence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move ahead. Like, which other forms do people not know about? Because when you say gender-based violence, we talk about sexual harassment and physical, like battering and all of that. So which other forms are people unaware of?
Yeah, thank you. So you also have verbal violence. So talking to using insulting words or threatening, issuing out threats, or trying to control somebody through threats. Yeah. So it's a verbal violence, and it's a form of gender-based violence.
Okay.
Then more importantly, you also have female genital mutilation,
Yeah.
which is the cutting of the external genital parts of the female, of the girl, or the woman. It's also a form of gender-based violence. Woman trafficking is also a form of gender-based violence.
Okay.
Even child early and forced marriage is also a form of gender-based violence. So it's a broad spectrum of practices that constitute gender-based violence.
But female genital mutilation, we've seen a lot of activism as regards this particular area. Do we still have this kind of violence dominant in this part of the country?
Yes, we still. In fact, as at the globally recognized National Health Demographic Survey, the NDHS, the last one was conducted in Nigeria in 2018. Though it showed that the prevalence had reduced among women 15 years and above. But for girls 0 to 14 years, it had increased. In fact, it had increased. As at that time, it was 19.2%. And again, because now some people, due to the misconception that if it is conducted by a health worker, then the severity will be less, the bleeding, they will know how to handle the bleeding, there will be no harm. Some parents now take their female children to health workers to have them cut. Now, that does not make it safe. It doesn't make it is still a form of violence, and it is even against medical ethics.
Wow. Okay. So how much of sensitization is being done?
Yeah. So looking at gender-based violence, the whole spectrum, so what we have is, so a lot is being done, but a lot more still needs to be done. Because the usual pattern is to have So when such cases happen, the prominent ones that lead to death, then there is a public outcry, protest here and there, and then it dies down. Then we wait for the next occurrence. So many organizations, including mine, we are doing a lot to create that awareness, because people, the sad thing is that most people do not even recognize
That they're
some
being
acts,
abused.
yes, some acts of violence
Against
as
them.
gender-based violence. They
Okay.
so, for example, the verbal violence now, some psychological violence, they don't recognize it as
Yeah.
gender. Even female genital mutilation, some people still don't recognize it
say it's
as
culture.
yes,
Yeah.
they see it as their culture. So, and meanwhile, it is gender-based violence. So we've implemented series of interventions, both as an organization and with other stakeholders, even with government, to make people aware of what gender-based violence is, and the need for every one of us to speak against it, to kick against it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what is the purpose of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence? Because we've seen it, in a lot of places saying this week we're starting this activism. What is the purpose of this?
Okay. So before I come to the purpose, I like to state that the 16 days of 16 days of
Activism.
16 days activism against
Gender-based
gender-based violence started from November 25
Yeah.
every year
Yeah.
till December 10. November 25 is the International Day Against Violence.
Gender-based
International Day International Day Against
Gender-based violence.
against violence against women.
Yeah. Violence against women. Yes.
And then December 10, when it ends, when that 16 days of activism ends, is the International Human Rights Day. Now, so the purpose of this 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is to create that global. So it's a global movement, and it's to create that awareness, to create, to bring it, to give it more visibility, and bring it to the fore, the issue of gender-based violence. That it is still a problem. It is something that transcends the issue of even public health. It is something that is cross-cutting, and it is a menace that we all need to address as people that have stake in the issue of human development. So it is to create that global awareness, but even beyond the global awareness, in our own corners, in every community, in every home, that people become aware of what gender-based violence is, speak against it, and take a stand against gender-based violence. So that's the purpose. And for this year, the theme is invest to prevent gender-based violence, or invest to prevent violence against women and girls. Yes, because so when we talk about the need to invest, most people would think about investing in terms of monetary terms, or in terms of government. But as individuals, as communities, as organizations, how are we even investing in ourselves, in our organizations, in our communities, in our various spheres of influence, to build capacity of people to be able to recognize and address gender-based violence practices?
Okay. All right. What constitutes gender-based violence, and how prevalent is it in this part of the country?
Yeah, so earlier I've mentioned that it's a broad spectrum that includes physical violence, sexual violence, FGM, female genital mutilation, child, early and forced marriage, and all that. So in terms of prevalence, again, it's a public health concern, and it's something that like I said, the survey that was conducted, the NDHS in 2018, showed that FGM as a form of gender-based violence had risen to 19.2% among girls that are 0 to 14 years of age. That means if we take 100 girls whose ages are from 0 to 14 years, 19 of them they've been caught. Now looking at gender-based violence as a spectrum globally, 1 in 3 women have experienced either sexual or physical violence.
Yeah.
Now, bringing it down to Nigeria, 33% of women have experienced gender-based violence.
33
Yes,
percent.
yes. In fact, so that means if we take 100 women, 33% of them have experienced a form of
Gender-based
gender-based violence. Now, it may not, that 33% may not look big until we realize that we are more than 200 million as a nation.
Yes.
And then looking at projections and official statistics that indicates that the population of women is higher than
that
men
of
in
men.
Nigeria. So if we now take that 33%
Out
of
of that
you see that it's a
population.
lot. It runs into millions.
Yes, and there are cases, I'm certain that there are cases that are not even reported yet.
Yes.
There are
So,
cases that have not even been
yes,
reported
that's
yet.
true. That's true.
Okay.
In fact, it's not even that there are cases. A lot of cases go
Are not
unreported,
reported.
and it's also because of the lack of enabling environment for people to report.
Yes. So how do we even sensitize people? Because, like you said earlier, there are people who go through things like this and are completely unaware of the fact that they're being abused. You know, I think just last week or last 2 weeks, we saw a video of a woman publicly crying, saying the husband battered her. We saw her face torn. We saw, her hand and some bruises of the sort. The next thing, before we're talking hours now, they've made a video together, the man apologizing, and then they're back together. This particular thing, if you ask me, is abuse as well, because you don't have independency of thoughts anymore. How do you think we can sensitize people on the need to become fully aware when they are in abusive situations?
Okay, thank you. That example you mentioned is a form of it's an example of intimate partner violence, which is also a type of gender-based violence.
Then it must be
Yeah.
really broad.
Yeah. Now, so coming to the situation, so we need to look at the root causes, and we need to first ask ourselves, how are children or people being raised in Nigeria? So there's a lot of concentration on the girl child, right from when they are raised to be submissive, raised not to raise their voice, and then to tolerate
Whatever.
yes. And then there is that issue of parents and guardians, not not all, but significant
Number.
significant number, not trusting what their children, whatever reports their children or words make. And so the that willingness to be able to open up
And talk to somebody.
yes, it's a challenge. Now, looking at what you raised, that some people do not even know that it is gender-based violence. So it also calls for us to examine our orientation as communities, as a society, as a nation, because if we look at how we are socialized right from where we are growing up, there are some things in some community. It may differ from community to community, but the spectrum or the lines are not really that distinct. There are some things that are just accepted as norm, yes, in some societies. For example, like this female genital mutilation.
Yes.
Now, we already
Yes.
talked about it, that some people regard it as their norm. Meanwhile, it constitutes a form of gender-based violence. And like you said, so for people to really recognize what constitutes gender-based violence, we need to continue to engage different segments of the population at their own level, whether at the community level, at the household level, engaging with religious leaders, engaging with community leaders, different segments of the population, on to create more awareness, to let people know about what constitutes gender-based violence and what they need to do. Because again, when we for some people, it is not even, yes, for some, recognizing that act of gender-based violence is an issue, because they can't even recognize it, because they've been socialized into it. They've been socialized to accept it as normal. But for some, recognizing it and taking a stance and taking action against it is even an issue. So you have families where a girl has been violated sexually, maybe by a family member or somebody close to the family, and they don't want to report it. Even if the family members know, they want to treat it as
in-house family thing,
and that allows the perpetrator to go scot-free and then create the scenario for another violation. You know, so one engaging with different segments of the population, at their own level, to create that awareness of what constitutes gender-based violence, so that they can recognize it. And I tell you that has really worked, because I know some communities, even in the FCT, where a task force on gender-based violence has been constituted, and people in the community, when they see it, they recognize it and they report. Yes. So that is the starting point, that people are empowered to recognize what gender-based violence is, the various acts, and then the enabling environment is created. So the enabling environment in terms of when an act of gender-based violence occurs, we are not laying blames at the feet of the survivor, the person experiencing it. We are not asking the survivor, what did you do or what did you not do. We are not asking her, what clothes did you wear or what clothes did you not wear. We are not asking her, what did you say or what did you not say. Rather, we are focusing attention on how the person will get justice and the perpetrator will be brought to book. You know, so when we do that, that creates that gives the survivor the confidence, and it also creates that enabling environment for others to speak out. And you realize that most people actually want to speak out, people that have experienced gender-based violence, but they are not sure they will receive support. And there is something about, if I think about something I want to do and I feel so this it's called perceived social norm or perceived social support. If I perceive that I'm not going to get support concerning what I want to do, I'm not likely to do it. Of course. And it also applies to even perpetrators of gender-based violence. If they perceive that, if I engage in, and if I violate a girl, for instance, or I engage in physical violence, I'm going to be sanctioned. Nobody in this community will support me. Then it will deter the person from. So all those we need to look at all those areas and then bring them into the programs, into the activities we do to end gender-based violence.
All right, people, you're still tuned in, of course, to Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja, your radio experience you can count on. It's 11:30, and we're having the conversation here with Mr. Olumide Adefioye. He is a social and behavioral change specialist and a USAID Momentum Safe Sojourning in Family Planning and Obstetrics. We're talking about gender-based violence and the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. I hope you're learning a thing or two, but give us a few more minutes and then we'll keep up with this conversation. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Can we play those songs?
The good tunes just don't stop.
The good tunes just don't stop.
Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja.
Playing the best music from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This is
102.3 Abuja. Eagles 102.3.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Of course, you're still tuned in to Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja, your radio experience you can count on. And yes, we're with Mr. Olumide Adefioye. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right, well, moving on. What factors contribute to gender-based violence? Because you have talked about how some cultures and traditions and family backgrounds support all of these things. But can we know other things that support, other factors that contribute to gender-based violence?
Thank you very much. So in addition to what I've said before, the lack of enforcement of the law.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a significant factor that contributes to gender-based violence. I like to say this, that in 2015, the then president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Goodluck Jonathan, signed into law the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the VAP law, and that criminalized every act of gender-based violence. But enforcement of the law has been has been problematic. And in fact, in Nigeria, we have the Child Rights Act. Yeah, but again, only not all states have domesticated it in. So that's also a challenge. So enforcement of the law is still a challenge. And I'll give an example. In one of the northwest states, a girl was raped by a neighbor. And some months after that, the girl became pregnant. She didn't even know. It was people in the community that saw the telltale signs of pregnancy and then questioned her. And she confessed that she was raped, and she mentioned the person. But instead of going after the person to ensure he faces the wrath of the law, they reported the girl to the local police. The local police arrested the girl and took her to court.
They abused.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, the rape survivor, they took her to court. And then the magistrates in the local court sentenced the girl to 6 months imprisonment with an option of 6,000 naira fine. Now, because of the poor financial status of the girl's family, they couldn't afford it. And so the girl was going to go to prison. But just before then, the magistrate in that local court that handed down that sentence attended a program, an orientation on gender-based violence, and that is when she realized that no, number one, this girl is just 14 years old. That means she's a minor. And then she's even a survivor. She's the one that experienced this. So this is a clear violation of her rights. And then she now had to refer the family of the girl to a lawyer who was willing to provide pro bono services. And then the lawyer was able to argue the case and won the case for the girl, and the girl was left off the hook. I can't really remember at this point whether they were still able to prosecute the offense, but you can see that miscarriage of justice. Now, so if that kind of thing, of course, it will be noised in the community that a girl that got pregnant has been sentenced, and people that. So that kind of thing will enable the culture of silence. That's why people that experience it will not speak out, because they are not sure of getting justice. They are even from the angle of the law. They are not sure of getting justice. From the angle of the community, they are not also sure. So you can see the two. Number one, the community that is supposed to serve as a buffer, as a protective arm for that girl, they were against her. They didn't support her. The law too, as in the interpretation of the law by the magistrate, didn't also favor the girl. So you have two powerful entities, that were against the girl.
It's supposed to be for her.
Yes, they are supposed to be for her. So you see that for us to be able to, when we talk about factors that contribute to gender-based violence, when people do not have that confidence in the system, when they don't believe, when they don't have that belief that they will get support from the community, they will get justice from the law, then of course
anybody
they won't talk,
they
won't do anything, and then it gives the perpetrator, it just
they think they can get away with it every single time.
And again, we also need to realize that aspect of getting that communal support is very important, because most times the perpetrator is even within the community, walking freely. So if you go to report to the police, for example, and the police say no, go and settle this one in your family, or this is outside our, or something like that, and maybe the perpetrator gets to know, that's also a serious security challenge for the survivor. So all these things we need to do better. The government needs to do better in terms of law enforcement, and that also means that for security agencies like the police, like the civil defense and other security agencies, and even the judiciary, there is the need to build their capacity.
Yeah.
What do they even know about this VAP law? And what should be their role in ensuring that the law is enforced? So there is a need for capacity building for the for law enforcement agency, for the judiciary, and then there is a need for orientation too for leaders at various levels, and even every stakeholder, every member of the community, whether of the religious community, whether at the household level, whatever and wherever people have an association or a group, there is a need for continuous sensitization. So it's not just for us to do this the various media campaigns during these 16 days of gender-based activism. It has to be an ongoing sensitization, because some of the causes, some of the factors are also deeply rooted in our norms, and that needs to change.
Okay, so let me ask, what is your organization doing, to change this entire process, especially in Nigeria? What is your organization doing to end gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much. So the Momentum Safe Surgery in Family Planning and Obstetrics, the MSSFPO project, is funded by USAID, and we are targeting two key areas that are also in the gender-based violence spectrum. So we look at female genital mutilation. I already talked about it, that it's a form of gender-based violence. So number one is that we have worked with service providers, so that sensitizing them, doing capacity building programs for them, so that they recognize female genital mutilation as a form of gender-based violence. And even when clients come to the health facilities, they bring their children, they screen those children, those female children, they screen them for female genital mutilation. And when they discover that a girl has been caught, they question
the parents.
The parents, yes, they question, and they also use other avenues to sensitize clients. People come to the health facility for services, yes, on gender-based, on female genital mutilation. Beyond that, we also work with community leaders.
Okay.
Because we recognize the fact that community leaders have a significant role to play to end gender-based violence. Now, we also work with other organizations as a form of partnership to end gender-based violence, to end female genital mutilation. The other area where we work, which is also significant for us, is in the area of preventing and treatment of obstetric fistula. Now, obstetric fistula is a condition where pregnant women, due to prolonged obstructed labor, they now start leaking urine or feces uncontrollably. Now, these women, what happens is that because of the misconceptions in the communities, these women are isolated. And so when I mean isolated, they are isolated physically. They are not allowed to stay with other members of the family. They are also isolated from economic opportunities, which is also a form of gender-based violence. So when you deny a person access
because of their state,
yes, when you deny a person access to economic opportunities or resources because of the person's gender, that is a form of gender-based violence. And these women, they are not allowed, they are denied access to. So one part of the things we do, apart from conducting surgeries for those women to repair that fistula, is to also empower them economically, so that by the time they get back to their own communities, they have an economic activity that they are doing that is bringing them income. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Olumide Adefioye. Quickly, in 1 minute, just give us a word, concerning gender-based violence and key things that everyone needs to know as we round up.
All right. So I would just want to reiterate again to all our listeners that in the efforts or in the fight against gender-based violence, you are a stakeholder. You have a stake, and so one of the things you can do in your own little way, in your own corner, is to speak against gender-based violence. In this program, we've talked about the various practices, the various types. So please recognize it and speak against it. And please do not be a perpetrator. Do not even be an enabler.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because it's one thing to be a perpetrator and another thing to be an enabler. How can you be an enabler? Your silence. And not moving in accordance with the law. Thank you so much, Mr. Olumide Adefioye. Yes, people, if you're just joining us, you missed out. I have been hanging out with Olumide Adefioye, who is a social and behavioral change specialist with USAID Momentum, Safe Sojourning in Family Planning and Obstetrics, MSS FPO. Thank you again. And yes, I hope you did learn a thing or two. It's either you are a perpetrator or an enabler. So it's important that we build the culture of speaking up among our wards, amongst our loved ones, amongst our girls. Gender-based violence is something that is real. We see it every single day. We open Instagram, we see all the social media handles, we see all of these things play out in different families, in different homes, in associations as well. Do not be an enabler and do not be a perpetrator. And also enable people who have gone through things like this to be able to speak up so that solutions can be found. Thank you again, people, for joining us on the show. This is Martha signing out of the Mind and Body segment from the Midday Extra Show here at Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja, your radio experience you can count on. Next time what you hear from me, it will be taking care of your career and your professional well-being. We're having an interesting conversation right there. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.